Well, she can't spend any of it right now anyway. I mean, it's my money.
But it's my money.
Yeah.
My money. Not our money, my money.
It is my money that she uses.
Today we're going to be reviewing a video from Caleb Hammer's channel. Now, please be aware, Caleb Hammer's channel is not a Christian channel, so I certainly don't support the values and language often used on his channel. The reason I want to discuss this video today is that I think it highlights really well why the Bible puts such a strong emphasis on being biblical in regards to money. While this content's going to be relevant for all of us in this day and age, I'm going to be trying to narrow down our focus. So I'll be talking to Christian single women who want to get into a healthy marriage one day and why it's so important to choose a man who's biblical with money. I'll be highlighting some clips from this video, so if you want to get the full context, I'll leave a link in the description of this video so you can watch the whole thing on your own. Now, to set it up a little bit, just so we can be all on the same page, Caleb Hammer's channel is kind of like a cross between a celebrity roast, where he's really cruel to the guests, kind of in a comedic way / serious way, combined with like a Dave Ramsey seminar. So that's what his skit is on his show. On this episode we're going to be reviewing, there's a husband and wife, and the husband's 28 and he makes $84,000 annually. The wife's 26 and she makes around $25,000 annually, and they're in debt of $400,000. They've been together since high school. They have a 1-year-old daughter. So I think with that information, we can get into the clips.
Yeah.
What's going on, guys? What are we talking about?
I like to spend money and not tell my wife.
Yeah, that's a classic situation on the show at this point.
So did you catch what Caleb just said there? The husband said, I like to spend money and not tell my wife, hide it from her. And then Caleb's like, yeah, unfortunately, that's pretty common on this show today. And I think that brings up a great first point. So point one is, if you find a man who's biblical with money, that's a great sign. He's going to usually be biblical in other areas of his life too. So unfortunately, it's just common nowadays for spouses to be lying to each other about money. 2 Corinthians 3:1-2 says, but understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money. So it's going to be hard for all Christians to find a godly partner. And since I'm talking to Christian single women in this video looking for a godly man, we have to come up with ways of how to identify these godly men. And that's where this financial piece can come in, because it's going to be easy for a guy to pretend to be biblical and to say the right things, but oftentimes his wallet will reveal the truth about where his values lie. Every time we spend $1, it's basically like we're casting a vote. How we spend our money tells the world what we really care about. As Jesus taught us in Matthew 6:21-24, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. All right, clip 2.
I said that we were going to have to make some payments or get a personal loan.
Okay. And then what happened from there?
I took all my credit cards out of my wallet like the dramatic queen I am and bent them in front of her and threw them at her. Not aggressively, but
just
I tossed
more like
them.
at the floor, angrily. But
Point 2, if a man is idolizing money, you will have communication issues with this man, especially when you're talking about finances. So if you were to watch this whole video, you would see that there's numerous sections where they talk about how they just cannot communicate about money without it blowing up into a huge argument. They both admit that it's the husband's sensitivity around this subject. He admits, I don't like talking about money. And she then says, well, I make him feel bad when I talk about it. And he gets sensitive. And then he says, I'm not sensitive. You don't hurt me. And the whole thing is just very apparent that they can't talk about it. This is a sign that you're dealing with an idol. When you start touching someone's idol, whatever it may be, in this case, we're talking about money, the person has a very strong emotional reaction. It's illogical, and you know, oh, I just touched a button there. A great biblical example of this can be seen in Acts 19:21 through 40. Paul shares the gospel in Ephesus, and people start abandoning their former false god called Artemis. The men who made the idols of Artemis, therefore, started losing a lot of money. So they started a riot and tried to attack Paul. This is exactly what people do when you start threatening their idols. So this is a powerful warning to a Christian woman hoping to marry a man that they can have great communication with. Whenever there's an idol in someone's life, it blocks you from connecting with that person, because they're always going to put that idol above you, and they're going to attack you when they feel like you're threatening their idol in their life. So money, of course, is a very common idol in a man's life. So you want to make sure that before you fully commit to a man, that you are on the same page and putting God above your money.
Money's always been kind of a hard topic because we have very different views. I like to save money and I like to see it just sitting in the account.
Okay, so how do you guys actually manage your finances together then? If we have a spender, we have a saver.
In October, I set up a separate bank account.
Point number 3, if you're biblical about money, but this man isn't, then you're always going to have a divided relationship. So I think this idea of having 2 separate accounts is really symbolic of the division within the relationship and rooting back to their differences on money. She has the value system of saving. He has the value system of spending. I didn't play the part in this video where Caleb kind of digs into him and he's like, what are you doing? Why are you spending all your money? You make a good money for your job. You shouldn't be struggling like this. And the guy's basically like, well, you can't take the money in your grave, you might as well spend it. And so that's his mindset of just spend, spend, spend. You're going to die anyway, so don't worry about the future. And of course, this woman doesn't think like that. She's trying to be more practical, saving for a rainy day, thinking about their daughter, and wants that security of knowing, hey, we have enough money if something happens. So big picture, without the same value system, in this case, we're talking about money, there's always going to be division within the relationship. It's interesting that a lot of times in marriage, one of the main problems people end up having is talking about money or dealing with money. And it blindsides a lot of couples because we don't do a good job in our modern society of figuring this issue out during the dating phase. And we could talk about solutions in another video, but basically when you're dating, your finances shouldn't be connected because you haven't made that level of commitment yet. And so it's very easy to kind of compartmentalize somebody's bad spending habits because it doesn't directly affect you. You're like, well, I have a different view of money. He spends his money this way. But I love him in all these other areas, so no big deal. But obviously, when you get married, though, it feels a lot different because you're supposed to combine your finances. And now this person's bad choices do directly affect you. And that's why it becomes this huge issue in marriage when people didn't see it coming before. So good tip here is that, yeah, you may be able to feel like you can accept him as he is right now, being bad with money, but just know that when you get married, his choices are going to directly affect you in ways that you feel. 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs.
Do you have no self-control?
Not really. I really don't.
Okay, and you recognize this and you're telling me this, so why have you not worked on this?
Because I don't care. I just like to spend money.
So what are we talking about then? Like, how are you guys going to survive at that point? You guys as a couple.
That's a
I
good
spend
question.
the money, I don't care. If hearing what he just said, what do you think?
I feel like we're constantly trying to get our way out of a hole. And I don't know.
How do you get out of a hole when he has that mindset?
I have no idea.
Point 4, if you end up marrying a man who lacks self-control, including with money, you will end up feeling very hopeless. Money issues really do often come back to self-control issues. Sure, in some cases, there needs to be an education process where someone may just not have learned the financial principles that are needed to succeed with money. But more often than not, it's not a lack of knowledge, it's more so a lack of willingness to control oneself. So here's a great tip to help you find a guy who will be good with money. Because you may be asking, well, like you said in the previous point, how can you even gauge somebody in this area when you're dating? Maybe the relationship's new, so you don't have a lot of evidence to go off of, and it would be inappropriate to start asking those types of financial questions at this point in the relationship. Or maybe you guys are younger and there's just not a lot of money to be had at this point, so it's hard to see if he would be good with money because he doesn't have any money right now, which is fine. If you're a young couple, as long as you're both working hard and can rent a little apartment and survive and get by, there's no problem with getting married. The thing you really want to look for is self-control. Because if a man has self-control generally in his life, usually that's a good sign he'll be good with money too later on in life. Now, on the other hand, if he lacks self-control in a lot of areas in life, like scrolling on his phone for hours, even though he complains about wasting his own time, or eating bad, even though he says, oh, I wish I could eat better, but he just keeps eating bad, or playing a bunch of video games, or he's addicted to something, just a general lack of self-control, that is a sign that he'll probably be bad with money too later on. Hebrews 13:5, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
Well, she can't spend any of it right now anyway. I mean, it's my money.
But it's my money.
Yeah.
My money. Not our money, my money.
It is my money that she uses.
Do you not feel just completely out of control? He literally just said, my money for her house.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you feel? This doesn't sound like a couple to me.
No, it's a little hurtful when he says stuff like that. I don't know.
Point 5, a man who is a slave to money will not be free to love his family through provision and protection. Money is not evil. The love of money is evil. Money is a tool that God wants his people to use for good purposes. You can even enjoy money in a very biblical way. As 1 Timothy 6:17-18 states, for as the rich in this present age charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasures for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. If you marry a man who's in love with money, he will put his own selfish desires above his responsibility as a man to love his family through the provision that God provides through him.
She doesn't know what she's doing. She's lost in this, man, because she can't do anything about you because you don't care. You don't care to change.
That is true.
And she's giving up. Be honest with me. Have you thought about just calling it quits?
No.
Really? I respect that. That's love.
I also couldn't make it on my own either, because I don't make enough to support me and my daughter.
Point 6, if you marry a man who's controlling with money, you'll often end up feeling trapped. Now, throughout this video, Caleb insinuates that perhaps this woman should divorce her husband because he's so bad with money. Now, that's obviously from a Christian biblical perspective, not the right solution. You don't just bail and divorce even though your spouse is sinning, doing things that are very wrong. That's a different conversation about what's a biblical divorce and what isn't. But in this instance, that's not the solution I would be encouraging this woman to seek out. But again, that's a whole nother conversation, because my focus right now is trying to help Christian single women not get into this problem in the first place. So you just have to remember that a man and woman are supposed to be a team, and that is a vulnerable position for a woman, oftentimes financially, because when they're in the child rearing years, she's particularly vulnerable and dependent on him if she wants to prioritize raising her children. So God made it that way. It's not supposed to be used as a power structure where women end up feeling trapped and devalued because they don't make enough money. The solution here is to marry a man who doesn't have that view and knows you both are adding equal value, even though you have different roles, and both of you are pivotal for the family mission, which is to raise healthy kids in the Lord and to love each other and glorify God. 2 Timothy 5:8, but if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
Does he hide things from you?
I mean, just finances.
Just finances that you know of. What does she know about the truck situation and what you did with that? What does she know?
She thinks the truck's paid off. It's not paid off. And I missed a payment.
Break.
Yes.
Point 7, if you marry a man who is bad with money, oftentimes this will eventually lead to him lying to you. Let's go back to 1 Timothy 6 verse 10. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. That last part there, pierced themselves with many pangs, it shows us that sin is never in a vacuum. You can never contain it. When someone gets out of control in one area of their life, it's always going to spread into every other area of their life eventually. So if a man is dishonest with himself about money, lying to himself about what he can afford, making purchases that he doesn't need, but he somehow justifies it in his mind, then that's a sign eventually he's going to start lying to you as well.
There was no money in the debit card.
Then maybe don't spend money you don't have.
Well,
It's really simple.
I needed a jacket.
Because you didn't have any at
They were
home.
At home. I couldn't leave work to go
I
get a
think you
jacket.
had a jacket. Did you have a jacket?
Not a work jacket.
Okay.
They were on sale.
Why do you need two?
They were on sale.
Why do you need any more?
I like jackets.
And point 8, if you marry a man who's bad with money, you'll end up getting enslaved too. When you get married, God wants a husband and wife to become one family unit. Therefore, their finances should be one as well. So you have to be aware that if a man is in debt, which the Bible talks about as a form of enslavement, then that is also going to enslave you, because you guys are one on this. Psalm 37:21, the wicked borrows but does not pay back, but the righteous is generous and gives. Proverbs 22:7, the borrower is slave to the lender. So if you like this format of video, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button. I recently got a comment saying, why do you ask people to give it a thumbs up? That's annoying. Well, it's not about vanity or trying to feel good about the video. It's really helping support the mission of this channel, which is to help as many people as possible. So when you give it a thumbs up, it actually triggers the algorithm on YouTube to spread this content to other people, and then more people can benefit from it. So thank you for helping me reach more people with this biblical content here on YouTube. I'm Mark from ApplyGodsWord.com. I'll see you at the next video. God bless.